All right, everyone. Welcome to the Judo Connection podcast. Once again, this is episode number 3. Super excited. Very happy to be here with you guys. Very happy to be sharing my thoughts, my comments, the little knowledge I have, and everything else we talk about here on this podcast. Just want to remind you guys once again, please subscribe. This is the Facebook page at Judo Connection. Please like the page. Also, come here over to Twitter at Judo Connection. Same thing. Like the Twitter page. Everything is up here. I just submitted the podcast to iTunes, so we're going to be on iTunes very shortly. We're already on YouTube. As you can see here, Judo Connection podcast episode 1 and 2 are already up. Guys, please, if you can, if you guys like what you're hearing, if you like the content, please share the podcast. Please like, comment, subscribe, share to the people that are close to you, people you think that may like it. Could be the people in your dojo, people in your gym, people in your inner circle, people you know from other places that might be interested, your coaches, your instructors, etc., etc. Anyone that would like to be on the podcast that has some judo experience, jiu-jitsu experience, wrestling experience. You don't have to be famous. You don't have to be world champion. Anyone at all that has some thoughts that they want to share, anything they want to talk about, open invitation, contact me, judoconnection@gmail.com, email me, or contact me through Facebook, Twitter, and everything else. So guys, let's get right into it. I want to start this podcast out today answering some comments because we actually got some. So let's go right into those. We got some here on Facebook. Let's look for those right here. All right, so we have Mr. Jared Gansert. This is a young man here from Revolution in Houston, a young judoka. So his question is, what is the importance of training the transition from standing to newaza? We'll start with that one. So the transition from standing to newaza, this is super, super important. Now, why is it important? I want to start off, first of all, by directing you guys to an amazing video that I just saw on YouTube. I'm actually going to show you guys where it is. Let's look for it here. I really want to show you guys this video because it talks specifically about this video, right? About what Jared is talking about. So we're going to look for Anne Marie, which is Ronda Rousey's mom. What was her last name? 1 second. Okay, so we're going to look for Ronda Rousey's mom, Anne Marie Burns. So there's a podcast that she does. First of all, let's start off with this. For those of you who don't know, obviously 100% of you must know who Ronda Rousey is, former UFC bantamweight champion, judo bronze Olympic medalist, silver world medalist. Her mother, Anne Marie Burns, was also a very, very good judoka. She was a world champion back in, I think it was 1982. She was also a Pan American Games gold medalist, junior world champion, junior nationals. She was a national champion. She has every U.S. title you can imagine. Now, Dr. Anne Marie is also, like I mentioned, Ronda Rousey's mom, very good judoka. But she has a very good podcast here that you guys can check out. Let's see which was the one I saw. It's here on YouTube. Look for it. I was watching it recently. I don't know what happened to it. It was an interview with her. Let's see where it went. Okay, here it is. So Ronda Rousey's mom goes off on Coach. It's that one. That one's very good. And then you guys can also look, because she talks about this in that podcast, or you can also go to Mr. Lex Friedman. He's the one that has another interview with Ronda Rousey's mom. There he is right here. This is his channel. Subscribe to him. He has some great videos. Lex Friedman. So on his channel, you can look for the video. Let's see where it is. and you can check out, here it is, Anne Marie DeMar's interview, Take It Uneasy podcast number 29. Check that out. That's where she talks about this specific topic, which we're going to go back to right now. So the importance of the transition from standing to newaza. Now, this is huge. This is a big reason why the U.S. judo athletes are so good, specifically Travis Stevens, Marty Malloy, Kyla Harrison, Rhonda, and a bunch of other, obviously Jimmy Pedro Jr., Sr. If you look at their game, they're obviously not as technical, you would say, as, for example, the Japanese judoka, the Russian judoka, some of the European judoka. They have more of a grinding it out game to how they fight. But the point I'm trying to make is that what they do amazingly well, and a lot better than a lot of other countries on the world scene, is that how they transition into the ground. So as you know, they all have amazing ground game. Kyla Harrison has an amazing ground game. Travis Stevens specifically, he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt under Danaher, who is another amazing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach. And his ground game is ridiculous. I mean, he's competed in Copa Podio. He's a high-level grappler in every sense of the word. So what's the importance of this? The importance is that in judo, traditionally, we've lost, and I've talked about this before, we've lost a lot of the importance of ground game. We've lost the urgency to go for ground attacks, ground techniques. Why? Because they don't give us a lot of time in a judo match to hit the ground. So what's the importance of being really good at this? Is being able to finish fights faster and having more ways of finishing fights. And how do you do that? By training transitions. What are those transitions? Well, when you attack, person goes on all fours, person is on their knees. You go for the Jujigatami. You go for the roll into a pin. You go for a roll into a choke. You go for a million things you can go for. And what'll that do? That'll make your opponent be even more nervous and more afraid of attacking. Why? Because if they attack and they do a half-assed attack, or if they attack, you block, they end up on their knees, you can still attack. You can still go for the ground. So why is it important, Jared? It's important because you can use that transition from the standing tashiwaza to the ground newaza to win the fight, or at least end up on a dominant position on the ground where you can dominate the fight or eventually win the fight. Now, where do we see this a lot in very high-level judokas is when they move out onto a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu match, or they move into, let's say, a no-gi grappling match, where when you throw someone, you get the ippon. Obviously in judo, once you get the ippon, you win. But what's the difference between people that emphasize the transition? They're not just happy with getting the ippon. They're happy with getting the ippon and transitioning into a pin, a choke, or an armbar. And that's what made Ronda Rousey so great in MMA. How many fights did she win by armbar? Jesus, like 10 fights. She won a bunch of fights by armbar. How? Because to her, it was an automatic transition to go from whatever throw she was doing straight into that rolling Jujigatami. So that's really important. Everyone should work on that, and it's a key element of judo. It's a surprise element of judo that a lot of people don't think about. So let's move on. Second question was capitalizing off the throw and how it's beneficial for any grappler, especially our jiu-jitsu brethren. This is big. This is another part that we just don't think about. And it happens a lot in jiu-jitsu. You see guys that they go for throws, they get a throw, and they end up in the guard. Or they get some sort of entanglement where they end up getting a single or a double. They slam the person or they throw the person on the mat, but then they don't do anything with it. And then the person on bottom just recovers guard. You're wasting your time, because if you're a let's say judoka, a wrestler, sambo practitioner, where predominantly your game is to throw, to get the ippon, and you're going into a jiu-jitsu match or a submission grappling match, you don't want to throw someone, go through all that effort, because normally when you're in that kind of match, it's not going to be as easy to get a throw because people are going to be defensive. They're going to bend over. They're going to defend, use all kinds of grips to stop you. So you're going through all that trouble to throw the person, and you don't capitalize on the transition. You don't capitalize on that throw to go to your pin, to go to your armbar, to go to your choke. If you're in jiu-jitsu, to go for the heel hook, the knee bar, the twister, etc., 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 crucifix. So it's important to capitalize on it. It's always important to keep that in mind. If you throw, you get an ippon, go for the kesagatame. If you throw, you get a yuko, roll into it, get a crucifix, get a yokochiho gatame, mount, get a kamichiho gatame, tadashiho gatame, mount the person, finish it off. Why? Because even in judo, if you throw and you don't get the ippon, you still got to finish it off. And it's a lot easier if you throw someone and you get, let's say, the yuko, which is now a wazari, or you get or what we normally traditionally know as a wazari, and you pin the person, you win. You don't have to get back up again and try and throw them again and run the risk of you getting thrown yourself. So why is it important, Jared? It's important to capitalize on it. So in any type of grappling situation, you get it. And even in a street fight, if you throw someone in a street fight, you don't want them to get up and punch you in the face. If you take someone down in the street, I mean, that's, of course, assuming that you don't kill them when you throw them, or you don't, open their head, split their head open when they fall to the ground, which is very likely if they don't know how to break a fall. If they do fall and they have, a lot of adrenaline, they're going to get right back up, and they're going to try and punch you and kick you in the face. So when you throw the person, capitalize. Go for the armbar, go for the choke, go for the pin, ground and pound, smash their head in. You're on top. You're in a dominant position. And that's a big problem that I see a lot, and that is happening a lot with sport jiu-jitsu, judo, and even wrestling. If you're in a street fight, you don't want to pull guard. And this is a big problem with jiu-jitsu practitioners that try and use this knowledge in a real fight. You don't want to pull guard in a real fight. Number one, there's no mat. You're going to fall on cement. You're going to hit your head on the ground. You could probably die. Number two, you don't want a dude on top of you. You don't know what he knows. What if the guy's a professional boxer? What if he's a professional kickboxer? What if he's an MMA fighter and he starts raining down punches on you? And especially if you're a gi fighter, there's no gi to grab. There's no X guard. There's no spider guard. There's no whatever guard. So why is it important to learn how to throw, capitalize on throw, and learn how to submit your opponent off a throw and not in an entanglement where you drag the person to the ground? It's important because it could save your life. That's why it's important. You don't want to single-leg a dude and just pull guard. No, you want to single, throw him to the ground, knee on belly, pass the guard, mount, armbar him, or smash his face in. Or hey, just take his back. Because most of the time, they're going to give their back. They don't know what they're doing. They're going to feel safer by giving their back. Choke them out. But don't do this throwing and letting go thing that a lot of guys do. Don't do that. Capitalize on the throw. If you're a judo guy, you fight someone. If it's a street fight, grab that shirt. If they have a jacket, anything they have, grab it. Throw them. And then capitalize on it. It's very simple, but it has to be emphasized. We can't forget about that. That's very important, and it's a big reason why makikomi exists. You go to makikomi, which is finishing the roll on the person, to train this. So it's important when you're training throws, when you're doing ushikomis in a practice, it's important to do the whole throw, not just throw and pull the person back so it's not a terrible fall. It's good to practice this very often. Throw and then roll on the person. But don't just roll on the person just to make it look nice and then squish the person. No. Throw, get the ippon, and capitalize in transitioning to something else. If you throw and you fall on the side of the person, get your kesagatame. Kesagatame is a great position to have. And it's actually where a lot of people that are not trained in any martial arts and street fights end up. You get an over under on the person. You go for a goshi. You throw the person. You end up in a kesagatame, which is what? You're lassoing your arm on over their head, behind their neck, and you squeeze them in. It's the most basic pin in judo. It's the most basic pin in wrestling. It's the most basic pin that exists. It's natural for us. Why? It's comfortable. You feel control. That's an amazing pin. There's so many things you can do from there. You can do an arm lock from there. You can change it to a crucifix. You can change it to side control. You can do the Josh Barnett, the squeezing one where you poke the head up. I love to do that a lot because I'm a heavy guy. You poke the head up, you squeeze, it works. So basically, long answer, Jared, but that's pretty much what you have to do. So transitioning from standing to newaza, capitalizing off the throw, all that, and how it's beneficial for any grappler. It's so beneficial. It's like if you're a boxer, you're a striker, right? And you know how to strike, but when you get a good strike, you don't finish the person off on the ground. You're letting them get back up, which is a very unreal. It's a very unreal aspect of boxing, and it's a reason why MMA is a lot more real, and it looks and feels a lot more real. Is because in MMA, if you get knocked down, that person's jumping on you and he's gonna ground and pound you until he finishes the knockout. That's where boxing gets a little unrealistic. Where in a real fight or in a more real scene, if you knock the person down, you don't want to let them give him a 10 count. You're gonna jump on him and finish him off. Same thing for judo. If you throw someone, like in judo, for example, don't think that you got an ippon and it's done. No, you still got to go to the ground. You know, obviously in a street fight, when you throw someone hard, especially if you're a good high-level judoka, you get a good throw on a person, put your body weight on them, and it's on cement or on any other type of hard surface like wood or anything else, they're pretty much going to be done. It's going to be a shock to them. They're not going to be able to breathe. They're pretty much going to be done. But what if the person's not? What if it's a very athletic person, tucks their head in, doesn't get blown out by the throw? You still got to finish them. So keep that in mind. Great question, Jared. Guys, if you have any other questions, any other comments, please hit me up on Facebook, hit me up on Twitter, hit me up on YouTube, and on Google Plus as well. And then, by the way, like I said, check out Mr. Lex Friedman's channel. He's got some great interviews. He's got interviews with Travis Stevens, Kyla Harrison, Jimmy Pedro, a lot of great people. So yeah, guys, that's a little insight there. That's a great question by Jared on that transitioning aspect of it. And it's very important, especially if you want to cross-train, like I have for the past few years. I've been cross-training a lot with jiu-jitsu. And really, I mean, a lot of people, there's a lot of bad blood between judo and jiu-jitsu competitors and practitioners. But in reality, we're two wings to the same bird. In reality, we come from the same root, and that's Japan. Obviously, both one is kept more of a traditional route, which is judo. Jiu-jitsu has adapted more things from other arts, catch wrestling, sambo, or catch as can. But in reality, it's very similar, and we just had different goals. One goal is to get a throw, other goal is to take the fight to the ground, where it's more controllable. And it really is more controllable. I mean, if you're fighting one-on-one, and you really want to be sure that you're going to take the least amount of damage, and you're going to make, sorry about that, motorcycle there passing by. So if you want to make sure and you want to keep the variables as more in your control as possible, yes, if you take a fight to the ground, if it's a one-on-one fight, the variables start to become much smaller. Why? For first, you can't get knocked down on the ground. I mean, if the person mounts you and they knock you into oblivion, yes. But if you're standing, you can get punched, you can get kicked, you can get elbowed, you can get headbutted, you can get, I mean, there's a million things that can happen. And obviously when you're in the ground, those exist as well, but it's much more control. You can tie people up, you can take their back, pin them, dominate them. You can put the fight into your terms a lot easier than on a standing aspect to a fight. But key element is, how does the fight get to the ground? That's the problem. You want the fight to get to the ground on your terms. See what I mean? So that's why wrestlers and judokas, which are mostly focused on throwing, you can dictate in a real fight, not in a sport contest. In a real fight, you can dictate where that fight's going to go. If you're a judoka or you're a wrestler, you're fighting a boxer, a kickboxer, you don't want to stand with the person. You're going to take them down. So Independently, you're going to control the distance. You're going to try and acquire the distance, take the least amount of damage as possible. Hopefully you don't get kneed or kicked or punched in the face. But once you take a boxer or a kickboxer and you take them down, it's easy pickings from there. Very easy. Mount, take the back, etc., etc., etc. Now, you don't need to learn barambolos and X guards and cross guards and spider guards to be able to submit someone on the ground in a real fight. As long as you have a rear naked choke, as long as you have 2 or 3 basic pins, side control, mount, north-south, that's more than enough to control a fight. That's more than enough than what you're going to need. Judo people obviously know it, wrestlers know it, Sambo knows it, Jiu-Jitsu guys know it too. But what's the problem? Getting the fight to the ground. Big problem with Jiu-Jitsu, modern sport Jiu-Jitsu, there's no takedowns. They don't train takedowns. They don't train how to take people down on a daily basis. It's like a once in a month thing. If you do something once a month, you really think you're going to be able to do it right off the bat in a real fight? No. Will you be able to do it in a sporting contest? No, you won't. You won't. That's why Jiu-Jitsu contests have terrible, terrible stand-up. See what I mean? So that's why I believe that Jiu-Jitsu fight, especially in gi Jiu-Jitsu, because no gi, it's funny how no gi Jiu-Jitsu is all the opposite. People do stand up more. They do get much better throws. They go for doubles much more. They go for singles more. There's more control behind the head, control over and under. There's more Greco in it. But why? Because there's no gi to grab. And people like to stand more. Why? They feel more comfortable because you can't grab the gi. But that's why it's very important to be very important to evolve. It's very important to add things to your arsenal, to blend things in. Me, for example, when I started doing lots of no gi, obviously I'm a judo player at heart. There's no gi to grab. There's no sleeve. There's no lapel. There's nothing. So what do? You learn a little Greco. You go over and under. You grab the wrist, tie the wrist down. You go double under, double over. You grab behind the head. You learn how to attach yourself to someone so you can get a throw. So that when the time comes, you can go over under, get a hip toss. So you can get an Ushimata, a Haragoshi, an Ogoshi, all those kind of things that really do work. Now, if you're a wrestler, easy pickings. This is what you've been doing forever. Doubles, singles, suplexes. That's your bread and butter. It's a lot easier for them, obviously. But it's very important to learn throws, to learn how to throw someone effectively, to learn how to grip. Grip fighting is key. Grip fighting is key in a gi fight. It's so important. So that's why I personally believe that every jiu-jitsu practitioner should learn how to throw. Because in reality, when you go to that competition, you're starting standing. And even though guard pulling is not frowned upon as much as it used to, it really is the cop-out to the stand-up fight. I mean, if you just sit down, you're just telling the person, listen, I can't throw you. I'm just going to sit down. Let's take the fight to the ground. No, I think that there should be obligated to engage. You should be obligated to be thrown or throw the person. That's the only way I believe it should go to the ground. Now, jumping guard to jump and tie your legs around the person, I believe that's fine, because you're doing something. You're physically bringing the person down to the mat with you. That's fine. But starting the fight out and just sitting down, it's ridiculous to me. It really is it's ridiculous in my opinion. That shouldn't exist. But that's why the new IBJJF rules, there has to be contact for you to pull guard. Now, in gi, obviously, it's way easier to drag a person down to the mat. You grab on, and then you just throw yourself down. The person is going to come down with you, unless the person's the Hulk. So, no gi, it's a lot different. You can't do that. There's no way to pull the person down with you, especially if you're all sweaty, or if you do no gi with no shirt on. Forget it. You're not going to be able to take the person to pull guard like that. But that's a whole nother topic. So basically, guys, what do I want to tell you guys with this? If you do jiu-jitsu, train throws, train grip fighting. If you're a judoka, learn the ground. Learn how to not give your back on the ground. That's very important. That's a big thing I've struggled with in the past few years. You're trained as a judoka to give your back if you don't feel comfortable on the ground. Why? Because of our rules, if you go up your back, you're in turtle, the person's trying to work. If they don't get anything in like 5 or 10 seconds, they're going to call a stop. The fight's going to come back up. That's standard. But in a jiu-jitsu fight, guess what? There's no stop and get up. There's no stop and reset. There's keep going until you get out or you get submitted. Same thing with pins. Obviously, it doesn't happen very often where judokas get pinned in a jiu-jitsu match. But if you do, it's very weird to get pinned and not be able to get out. It's very weird. Because obviously in a judo match, you get pinned, you explode, you push them off. But if that doesn't work and the person has 3 minutes to work on you and you're not going to lose by the pin, you have to do something to get out of there. That's very, very, very hard. Now, it goes both ways. Jiu-jitsu fighters are not very accustomed to being pinned for long periods of time. And they're not used to the pressure that comes from a high-level pin from a judo guy. Same thing for judo guys. We're not used to having someone that grabs your back and just does not let go. Sinks the hooks in, ties your arms up, gets your neck, cranks it. And another thing is that there's a lot of things that are illegal in judo that are extremely legal and are completely normal in jiu-jitsu, like pulling you backwards. You can't do that in judo. Like getting chokes on the face or neck cranks. Those are not legal in judo. So there's a lot of things. Touching the face. A lot of people don't expect that. You get a hand in your face and you're completely out of it. Boom, you get submitted. So there's a lot of things that I personally believe just make each person in the other realm better. It just makes you better. If you're great at throwing people, hey, work the ground. Work the transitions. If you're really good on the ground, work your stand-up. What's the worst that can happen? You're going to get thrown. Big deal. If you get thrown, you're already on the ground where you're good. Okay? If you're bad on the ground and you're in a bad position on the ground, you don't feel good, push out, stand up. You're good. You're safe. If the person's not going to stand up, if you're a judo fighter, you're fighting jiu-jitsu, you feel in danger, stand up. Automatically you're out of danger. The jiu-jitsu guy's not going to stand up. If you're a jiu-jitsu guy, you're standing, hey, jump guard, but don't sit down. I mean, don't sit down. Jump guard or pull guard in an effective and realistic manner. Don't just sit down. That's a cop-out. I mean, it's like Josh Barnett said, training jiu-jitsu, if you're starting sitting down or on your knees, you're wasting your time. You really are, because this is not realistic. It's like starting a judo fight sitting down. It doesn't happen that way, ever. It doesn't happen that way in a competition, and it certainly won't happen that way in a street fight. If you're in a street fight, you're not going to tell the guy, hey, can we sit down and then we can start the fight? No, he's going to punch you in the face, and that's where the fight's going to start. So there's no time to sit down. There's no time to and jump and pulling guard by jumping on the person. That's going to get you killed in a street fight, because that person is going to slam you. And that's a natural reaction to anyone. It doesn't matter if you're a grappler, boxer, kickboxer. I don't care what you do. A person jump guards on you, and you are going to Rampage Jackson, Ricardo Arona, what's that called? Power slam the person on the ground. And that's certain death or hospitalization or coma. So please don't do that. Stop doing that. It looks great in jiu-jitsu. Even in jiu-jitsu, it's very dangerous. Obviously, slams are illegal, but you can fall off, hit your head. I mean, it's just, unless you're extremely athletic and light, please don't do that. Learn how to throw a person. Learn how to grab the person correctly, how to grip fight. Learn how to dominate a grip. Learn how to sweep. Sweep is very important. Sweeping in judo is just like evading punches in boxing. It's a sweet science of grappling. The sweet science of grappling, sweeping. It's the way to get a person down to the ground with the least amount of effort. You don't have to do anything. You just sweep them. It's extremely hard. It's the hardest part of judo, sweeping. It's very hard. How do you sweep a person? You get them off balance. Same thing in boxing. How do you evade a punch? You move your head. You move your torso. It's very hard. That's why most high-level boxers are not very good at evading punches. That's why Mayweather is the best. He can evade all the punches. And same thing on the ground, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, guys, there's my little rant for today. I'm trying to keep the podcast short for now. I'm clocking them in at about 30 minutes. The YouTube version will be a bit longer because it'll have an intro. It'll have a couple of more things. The audio version will be very short and sweet, so you guys can hear it and enjoy all the content. So guys, once again, thank you so much for listening, tuning into the Judo Connection podcast. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Google Plus, and everything else. So thank you again, and keep the mat rolling. Keep it rolling.